Hey guys, how are you doing? This is a new series, my girlfriend in Marvel who is Spider-Woman. Where I traveled to the Marvel world and became a transfer student at Empire State University. He also raised a traveling frog that could bring back specialties for him from different dimensions. So let's start the series. Marvel World. Inside a luxurious residence. The Frog Cub is going on a trip. The Frog Cub will send back travel photos from time to time. Please pay attention to check it. The return of the Frog Cub will bring back special products and special souvenirs during the trip. Please remember to check it out. Sitting on the high-end sofa, I couldn't help laughing when he heard the voice in his head, finally going out for a trip. 2 days ago, he transmigrated to this very dangerous Marvel world. Although he inherited a considerable legacy as an orphan, he still has a luxurious residence in the heart of New York City. But I, who is familiar with Marvel's plot, knows very well that if he doesn't have enough strength in the Marvel world, this considerable legacy is really about to become a legacy. Those goddamn superheroes fight, but they don't care about the safety of civilians' lives and property. It's all done after the fight is over. God knows if it will be that day when he is sleeping comfortably. And a man smashed in from the balcony, killing him in the end. Of course, he didn't want that to happen. Fortunately, a traveler, also successfully awakened his golden finger. But what I didn't expect was that his golden finger turned out to be a very popular minigame traveling frog that he played in his previous life. The gameplay is also very simple. The player has a little frog who likes to travel and only needs to prepare the luggage for the frog. The little frog will travel far and wide, and then bring back all kinds of souvenirs and special products as gifts for the owner. But now that it has become a reality, the game has changed a lot. The basic gameplay has not changed, but the place where the little frog travels has become the world of fictional worlds. TL/N, can someone give me a better name? The original terms are, the heaven and the world, and I changed it to, fictional worlds. It can be the world in the novel, the movie universe, the anime world, etc. That is to say, the special products and souvenirs brought back by the little frog will be the products of various dimensional worlds. And more importantly, I could use these things directly. This also made I look forward to what kind of gifts his frog cub could bring back to him on the first stop of his trip. After a day of waiting, this is the little frog he named Frog Cub finally going out for a trip. I don't know what kind of world he will travel to. But I hope he can bring back some items to enhance my strength. Otherwise, living in this peaceful New York City would always feel a little apprehensive. Looking at the game cabin in his mind, I muttered in his heart. Just then, the alarm clock set aside rang. I looked at the time. Time to go to class. Today is school day. Although he is a transmigrator, he is essentially a college student who has just grown up. Also a transfer student at Empire State University. I don't know if I will meet Spider-Man there. I muttered while holding his school bag. But on second thought it seems unlikely. In the past 2 days, in addition to waiting for his frog cub to travel, I also read the information of several important people. Now Tony is still working as an arms dealer, and he is in the dark. Captain America is still in the historical record. The Hulk has yet to appear in the public eye. In other words, the plot of the Marvel Universe does not seem to have started yet. Empire State University. New York City's premier university. Today is the school day, and a banner hangs at the school gate. Many well-dressed female students in the student union welcomed new students at the door. And I, who had just arrived, was naturally welcome. Although he is familiar with Marvel's plot. But that doesn't mean I is familiar with the environment. In addition, his predecessor also just transferred to this university. So he doesn't know anything about the school environment. Although he knows what class he has today and which classroom to go to. But he doesn't know how to get there. Just when I was about to ask a student from the student union. A young and beautiful voice sounded behind him. "Hey, this classmate, is there anything I can help you with?" I turned his head to look and saw a blonde girl with a good figure holding a stack of books. "Hello, I'm Gwen Stacy." When Gwen saw I turn his head, her beautiful eyes moved when she saw this well-behaved classmate. He is so handsome. After hearing Gwen's self-introduction, I looks at Gwen again. I immediately understood, isn't this Gwen Stacy, one of Spider-Man's 2 girlfriends? But is there something wrong with the timeline and the plot? According to reason, Tony has not become Iron Man in this world. Gwen and Peter Parker shouldn't be in college by now, right? Although there were doubts in his mind, I politely stretched out a hand to shake Gwen. Very soft and slippery. "Hello, my name is I. Gwen thought about it for a while, and then immediately said excitedly, "You are the new transfer student from our class, right? The professor told me about your situation 2 days ago, and let me show you the school. I didn't expect to meet you here." I also said with a smile, "It's a coincidence, so would you like to show me around the school and then take me to the class?" It was a coincidence that even I himself did not expect to be in the same class as Gwen. Certainly. Gwen took advantage of I's courtesy and replied playfully. Along the way, Gwen warmly introduced the environment of State University to I. "There's the library over there, the gym over there. I think we should continue to visit the campus next time. Because it's almost time for class." I shook the watch in his hand. Gwen said with a smile, "Don't worry, the direction we are going is the classroom. I'm just going to introduce you to the scenery along the way. Of course, if you want me to continue showing you next time, I'm still very happy to introduce it to you." I also returned with a smile, "Really? Then it's a pleasure to have a beautiful tour guide." This sentence is from I's heart, since Gwen is one of the few good-looking female characters in Marvel. Gwen blushed. "Look, our classroom is just ahead." Inside the classroom. After the professor gave a brief introduction to I, who had just transferred, he started a boring day of class. During the break time of class, Gwen will come over enthusiastically and tell I that he can come to her if he doesn't understand anything. Then leave the classroom. As the school's student leader, Gwen has other things to do besides class. I's class today was packed full. I was speechless, never expected to be a transmigrator. Still have to go to school. The lectures in class made him sleepy. Strange, it seems like this school doesn't have Peter Parker. I was puzzled. Logically speaking, Gwen appeared, there is no reason why Peter Parker should not appear. It seems that this Marvel universe is different from the plot of the Marvel universe that he knows. But it's easier to explain. Because the grandeur of the Marvel universe is more than just those few movies. At the same time, inside the State University Biological Laboratory, a middle-aged doctor frowned and prepared the green biological medicine in front of him. Around the laboratory, there are specimens of various reptiles. It looks very intimidating. The strange thing is that his right arm's clothes are empty and tied with a knot. This doctor broke an arm, almost all students in the state university know. Kurt Connors, a research PhD in reptile biological regeneration systems. Looking at the reaction of the biological reagents in the test tube, Dr. Connors breathed out a disappointed breath. Peter Parker, his assistant and student. Here I am, Dr. Connors. In the corner, a young man walked out with the test material in his hand, with a smile on his face. Looking at Peter's smile, Connor's failed experiment seemed to be affected a little. You seem to be very happy. Peter smiled shyly. Maybe it's because school starts today. Dr. Connors understood and raised his eyebrows, seeing Gwen again. Then today's test data has to be accelerated. So you will have time to invite your beautiful classmate to have a meal with you later. No, Dr. Connors. Today is the day for freshmen to enter, and she is relatively busy. And I think she wouldn't have accepted my invitation. After all, I'm just an ordinary student. And she's so excellent. Dr. Connors didn't say much when he saw Peter's dejected expression. He is a good student everywhere, very excellent. It's only that this boy has little confidence when it comes to this. Thinking of his family environment, Dr. Connors could only sigh slightly, and then said, "Don't worry, you can wait for the success of our research on this project. If we succeed, you will no longer be an ordinary student, and then you can boldly do what you want to do." I understand, Dr. Connors. Record this test. It still failed. After speaking, Dr. Connors walked to the side chair in disappointment and slumped down. Out of the corner of his eyes, he couldn't help but look at the empty right arm. Peter didn't say anything, but recorded the test data by himself. Inside the classroom, I kept speculating in every possible way as he kept turning his pen. His eyelids were battling from sleep, but he knew that he shouldn't sleep. So he has been thinking about his little frog. His frog cub has gone to the other world. And he is excited about what kind of items he will bring back. This stupid child doesn't know how to send a photo back. Didn't he know that his owner was worried about him? I thought as he kept himself from falling asleep on his deck. Until the end of school. The reminder sound in his mind sounded slowly. Ding dong. The frog cub is back. The frog cub brought you a travel specialty, come and have a look. In an instant, I came to his senses. Finally. And the bell for the last class rang at the right time. I hurriedly cleaned up the things on the table. Ready to go home. Suddenly, someone tapped I's shoulder behind him. I subconsciously came back to his senses and saw Gwen standing behind him in a pure white dress. The long skirt gathered Gwen's figure in a concave and convex shape. It made the other male students in the class keep glancing at her since she looked hot. There is a welcome party for new students tonight, do you want to join us? By the way, we still have extra time to walk around the campus. Gwen warmly invited. Freshman party. Why haven't I heard of it? Gwen immediately explained, we will inform you that you are welcome to enter the freshman year. You are a transfer student, so you don't know. I nodded, not wanting to go to such a boring party. And compared to this party, there are more important things to do now. I'm sorry Gwen, you know that I just moved to New York and I have a lot to deal with. So I can't come. But next time I will invite you to dinner, and you can take me around the campus at that time." Gwen's eyes were lost for a while. This was the first time she had been rejected by a boy. Although she had been asked by boys before, it's always her who refuses them. But this time, Gwen didn't refuse him. "That's a deal. I prefer steak." "Okay, it's a deal." After speaking, I picked up his school bag and ran out of the classroom. A woman or something will only affect my relationship with my frog cub. After half an hour, I got off the taxi and went downstairs. The taxi driver stuck his head out and looked curiously. "You really live here?" I smiled. "Of course. Another damn rich kid." The taxi driver scolded and drove away. Back home. The sun has gone down. I immediately opened the game in his mind. The game interface immediately pops up several prompt boxes. I clicked off the first few prompt boxes. In the last tooltip, a small item icon appears. This is the special product that frog cubs bring back after his trip. The icon is small, but it is not difficult to see that it is a golden belt. When I saw the belt, his heart beat faster. Is this true? His frog cub didn't really bring him back something like that, right? I clicked the belt icon, and the information bar automatically appeared. Emperor's Belt, from the world of Armored Hero, the strongest Armored Emperor armor summoner. After wearing it, it can summon the Emperor's Armor of Light. Fuck. It's really the Emperor's armor summoning belt. I was stunned. He didn't expect that the special product brought back by his frog cub for the first time was actually such a powerful thing. Emperor Armor. The top existence in the light and shadow armor. Even if a child summoned this armor, with the armor's instinctive fighting consciousness, he can smash the ancient four evils to the ground. And the most important thing is the following sentence: no blood requirements. It means that as long as he wears it, it can be summoned, and there are no such harsh summoning conditions. Holding back his excitement, I immediately took action. Click on the item column page. There are 4 small columns of bento, item, amulet, and specialty. I clicked on specialties. A lifelike belt icon appears in the specialties column. Clicking the belt icon, the game prompt pops up again. Are you extracting the special product, Emperor's Belt? Yes. I said silently in his heart. In an instant, I felt his hands sink. Looking down, a silver box appeared in his hand. This box contains the Emperor's Belt that can summon the Emperor's armor. I couldn't wait to put the box on the table. Pat. With a crisp sound, the box opened. The golden belt body lay quietly inside the box. I took it out of the box, and when his hand touched the Emperor's Belt, the two seemed to resonate. The body of the belt flashed golden light. I's eyes also flashed a golden light. This is the approval of the Emperor's armor. I immediately buckled the Emperor's belt around his waist, and then said lightly, Emperor's armor formed. A burst of golden light rushed from the 5-element spar on the belt, wrapping I's body. The golden light solidified, and a gold and silver armor covered I's whole body. There was also a unique reminder sound in the void, activation complete. The moment the armor fit together, I felt that there seemed to be an inexhaustible amount of power constantly emerging. I walked slowly to the mirror and looked at himself in the mirror. The incomparably domineering Emperor's armor covers his entire body. But it didn't affect I's actions and perception in the slightest. On the contrary, I's perception became extremely powerful at this time. In the whole house, he could clearly perceive even a flying fly. It seems that I'm still not strong enough. The Emperor's armor is still in its primary form. I looked at the Emperor's armor in the mirror. There is no Aurora shield on the chest. But I was not in a hurry, as long as he followed his own training and the specialties brought back by his frog cub. It's only a matter of time before the ultimate Emperor armor is summoned. And that cool to the extreme Emperor Dragon. Now, I wants to do one more thing. Before reaching the balcony, I jumped for life. His whole body rose to the sky in an instant. The Emperor armor can fly. Woohoo! In the air, I was flying happily. The bustling New York City below is getting smaller and smaller, only a few stars remain. At this moment, I also experienced the feeling of flying into the sky for the first time when Tony made the Iron Man suit. This feeling of freedom is really cool. Just when I was flying freely. An ultra-luxury building by the sea, built along a cliff by the sea, as if it had grown naturally on the cliff. At this time, the building was completely dark. There was only a burst of joyful sounds from one room. Playboy Tony lay on the bed with a blonde woman on him who even him forgot about her name. The only thing he remembers is that she was in good shape, so he took her home. This is the day-to-day life of Tony Stark, the playboy, the sole heir to the Stark Enterprise. Just as Tony was enjoying it, an untimely voice sounded, "Sir, a UFO has appeared over New York City, and the speed is very fast." The blonde on Tony was startled and rolled off Tony. She looked around in fear. Why is there a sound all of a sudden? It was still a man's voice. Could it be that this playboy in front of him has a special hobby? What? Jarvis, don't report this trivial matter to me. Maybe it is a newly developed weapon by those people in other countries. But don't worry, their weapons are no match for mine. Tony said proudly. As a genius in developing weapons, he is confident that no one on this planet can surpass him. Even his dad. The man who created Captain America. Neither can Howard Stark can surpass him. Come on, don't be afraid. He's just my AI housekeeper Jarvis, you know it stops halfway through. Tony said to the blonde woman beside him. When the blonde heard Tony's explanation, she immediately relieved herself, and said softly, I don't like half-doing things either. Just sitting on Tony, ready to continue. After Jarvis relied on his excellent artificial intelligence analysis, he still said, Sir, I still recommend you take a look. The blonde now knew Jarvis. Not only was she not frightened. Instead, she felt a different kind of stimulation. Hearing it, Tony becomes curious about what Jarvis saw and let Jarvis open a light curtain in front of him. Inside the light curtain, a golden humanoid figure flew freely. This time, Tony was restless. Pushing the blonde away from him, what is this, Jarvis? I don't know. But it seems to be some kind of mecha weapon. Enlarge. The picture of flying is instantly frozen. Under Jarvis' operation, the Emperor's armor was quickly modeled in 3D in front of Tony. That domineering outfit. Even the genius and conceited Tony couldn't help but exclaim, oh my god. On the sea. A jet-black aircraft carrier stayed here. Like a giant steel beast, crawling on the sea. From a distance, it looks very intimidating. Inside the aircraft carrier, countless electronic sounds echoed back and forth, and every corner of the country of the United States was being broadcast on the screen. Even something from an enemy country. On a high platform, a one-eyed bald black man stood on it wearing a black cloak. He looked indifferently at the operator below. On the wall behind them, an eagle-shaped sign stands. This is the largest spy organization in the country of the United States, SHIELD. And standing at the top is the director of SHIELD, Nick Fury. His duty is to stifle all hidden dangers in the cradle. But in fact, to put it bluntly, it is nothing more than a weapon used by the superior to wield it at will. Just as Nick Fury was looking at the surveillance attentively, Agent Hill, with a capable face behind him, was holding a surveillance tablet in her hand. Hastily ran to the podium. "Director, I suggest you take a look at this. Is there anything more important than me forming the Avengers plan?" Nick Fury said. As one of his henchmen, Agent Hill was aware of Nick Fury's plan. But so far, no suitable candidates have been found. "I think this will be the first person in your plan." Agent Hill hands Nick Fury the monitor in her hand. Nick Fury casually took the monitor from Agent Hill's hand. He had seen too many talented people during this time. But they couldn't get into his eyes. Most of them are still mutants. Considering the delicate relationship between mutants and the people, even if they are very capable, Nick Fury has to choose carefully. The Avengers he wants to assemble must be single-minded in doing practical things, without two hearts. Fight to protect humanity. The experience in his youth made him understand that there is more than one race of human beings in the vast universe. So the Avengers had to be built. Nick Fury glanced at the image on the monitor, and suddenly his pupils shrank. "When did this happen?" "Just now," Agent Hill replied. "Are there any clear images?" Agent Hill shook her head and continued, "The speed is too fast, and our satellites can only capture blurry images. But after going through the technical frame restoration, I still got a photo." Agent Hill's hand slipped, and a picture appeared on the monitor. They saw in the photo a set of golden armor and golden light soared in the sky like a soaring dragon. "Is this a mutant? Or a technological force? Can you find out the other party's location?" Nick Fury suddenly became interested. "We are fully monitoring. By the way, over Dr. Banner." Agent Hill immediately said, "Has escaped from the laboratory and is now missing. The people from the militant group seem to have got Dr. Banner's blood." Nick Fury nodded, "Follow this first." "Yes." Above the sky, our AI flew for a while before his excitement subsided a lot. "It's time to go back. And since I'm going back, let me try this skill." Our AI put one hand on the belt and said softly, "Kai." In an instant, our AI disappeared in place. Nick Fury, "What?" "Tony, what?" The two people who were not in the same place made the same shocked expression at the same time. In their satellite surveillance, the golden armor evaporated like air without a trace. "How to investigate this?" "Investigate shit. Nothing is left." But the two of them will not give up because of this. Fully mobilize the resources in their hands to find this short-lived armor. But the goals of the two are different. What Tony thought was, spend money. No matter how much money, let the other party sell this amazing technology to him. And Nick Fury wants to investigate the person behind the armor, and as long as the other party has a good character, he will directly pull the other party to the Avengers. Zing. The next second after teleportation is activated, our AI appeared in his home, and the Emperor's armor on his body dissipated with little golden light. Back in the belt. It seems that there will be an exercise plan next. After the combination of the armor just now, our AI also got a lot of information from the Emperor's armor. As long as his strength and psychic power are strengthened, in the future, the Emperor's armor can be summoned, and it can even be summoned directly without a belt. AI is still looking forward to that day. After all, no one wants to carry a suitcase around all day long. Can the special products that are taken out be put back in my frog cub room? Do it when you think of it. AI's mind moved, and he opened the game interface again. The chest with the Emperor's belt in his hand. Deposit. Will the Emperor's belt be stored in the Frog Kit's room? AI's face lit up with joy. It's really possible. Yes. The next moment, he saw his frog cub standing at the door blowing wind on the game screen. Suddenly there was a small suitcase in his hand. Then his frog cub took the suitcase and entered his small room. Then, above the small room where there was no operation, there was an additional box icon. AI clicked the icon. On the pop-up inventory interface, he saw the Emperor belt. Doesn't this mean that I will have a portable space in the future? AI looked at the silly frog cub, and the more he looked at it, the more he liked it. With a thought, he opened the frog cub's backpack. Get his luggage ready for his next trip. After the first trip, his frog cub's little backpack was empty. The only thing left is a permanent item after completing the novice tutorial, the 4-leaf clover amulet. How many things are prepared in the backpack and whether they are good or bad determines the number of days his frog cubs appear to travel. In theory, the longer he travels outside, the more souvenirs and specialties he will get. After only going out for a day, he brought back the Emperor armor. AI felt that it was necessary to upgrade the frog cub with some equipment and food. In this case, maybe he can bring back something better next time. I'm not greedy, I just want you to bring me something good like some peerless inheritance, supreme artifact, these small objects. AI thought happily while opening the game store. Here, there are a dazzling array of props that his frog cubs need to travel to the different dimensions. In the store, various items are clearly classified. Bento, amulets, props. In the game, different bentos, amulets, and props will bring different effects. It will have an impact on the places to travel, as well as the specialties and souvenirs brought back by the frog cubs. The currency used in the store is the game-exclusive clover. The clover can be harvested in the pond just outside the door of the frog cub. With the novice quest and AI's harvest in the past 2 days, the balance of clover is more than 500. After AI glanced at it, he directly spent 50 clovers to buy a luxurious bento for his frog cub. To know the cheapest bento, all you need is 10 clovers. Immediately afterwards, AI gritted his teeth and bought his frog cub a red scarf that increased his luck value for 200 clovers. The scarf, like the lucky charm, was a permanent item. Although it cost 200, AI felt that it was not a big loss. If it costs 200 at a time, AI can't afford it now. Put the purchased things into his frog cub's backpack in turn. The preparations for his frog cub's next trip are also done. The frog cub who got the bento went back to his room to eat. Looking at the silly frog cub eating, AI smiled like an old father. Growl tilde. AI left the game interface, and a protest sounded from his stomach. After all, using the Emperor's armor is also very physical. Picked up some ingredients from the refrigerator. Made 2 standard dishes. After dinner. According to the inheritance information obtained from the Emperor's armor, AI meditated and cultivated. This kind of cultivation is to improve the strength of the mind. As for physical strength, he needs to exercise. RAI's mind soon fell silent. Time flies fast. The prompt of the system sounded vaguely. The frog cub is going on a trip. The next morning, RAI washed up refreshed, picked up his school bag and went to school. Not only did RAI not feel tired after a night of training, but he felt more comfortable than ever. Even vaguely feel that his six senses have strengthened a little. Very subtle. But RAI likes this feeling very much. In a good mood, he took a taxi and drove in the direction of the school. Taking the taxi again, RAI's desire to buy a car became stronger. Because NYC taxis are really uncomfortable to sit in. Although his inheritance allows him to buy an ordinary mobility scooter. However, RAI had a better car buying plan in his heart. It's just that the time has not yet come. But he had a hunch that it should be soon. Taxis came quickly to the door of the state university. Just as RAI got out of the car and walked towards the campus, a shout came from behind him, RAI. Hearing this familiar voice, RAI turned around with a smile. "Hi, Gwen." Gwen trotted all the way to RAI and said excitedly, "You didn't come yesterday, we had a good time. It's a pity to miss it, there should be a chance next time." RAI said with regret. Just as the two were chatting, a police car drove towards the two and rolled down the window. A middle-aged man with blonde hair stuck his head out and looked at Gwen and RAI. Gwen's face immediately stiffened. A little embarrassed, she said, "RAI, let me introduce you to my father, George Stacy." "Dad, this is a new classmate from our school, RAI." "Nice to meet you, RAI." George held out his hand. RAI immediately understood what was going on, shook hands and said, "Hello, Mr. Stacy. This is Gwen's dad and the chief of the NYPD. At the same time, he is also a very protective father and occasionally sends his daughter to school." On the surface, it is to send his daughter to school, but in fact, it is to warn those students who have bad intentions toward his daughter not to mess around. Whenever Gwen and the other male classmates approached, George would go up and mingle. For nothing else, he is just afraid that his daughter will be hurt outside. It also made Gwen a little annoyed by her old father. She trotted all the way just now, just because she didn't want him to find her greeting RAI. Unexpectedly, she was discovered. Facing George's sharp eyes, RAI faced it without dodging or avoiding. George, who has many years of experience in catching criminals, can almost see the thoughts of many people at a glance. However, RAI in front of him caused him a hard time. His eyes were pure and he seemed to be a very innocent child. "Am I thinking too much? Looks like my daughter has made a good friend." RAI replied with a smile, "It should be my honor to know Gwen, she has helped me a lot." Gwen on the side was stunned. It was the first time she saw her father speak so highly of a stranger. At this time, the radio on the police car sounded, "There is a robbery in the back alley, please rush to support the nearby police officers." George sighed and said, "Looks like I'm in a bit of trouble, I have to go first." "Goodbye, Dad." Gwen was instantly happy. RAI also said, "Goodbye, Mr. Stacy." George, who was about to drive away, then said, "Gwen, remember to go home for dinner tonight, your mother wants to show her cooking skills tonight." "Okay, Dad." After saying that, he glanced at RAI intentionally or unintentionally and drove away. Seeing George leave, Gwen looked at RAI excitedly. "RAI, my father has never commented on a person like this." "Really? Then I'm quite lucky." The two walked into the campus chatting and laughing. To others, they seem like a couple. not far from the school gate. Peter Parker was carrying a school bag, watching Gwen's retreating back, and at the same time looking at AI. Is that the new transfer student from her class? There was a glint of jealousy in his eyes. Then his expression became inferior again, and when he thought about his own family background, he thought about Gwen's family background. Peter thought it was impossible. He and Gwen are good friends. But it also stopped at the stage of good friends. As long as my research with Dr. Connors makes progress, I can invite you to have a meal with me. Peter's eyes were firm and he walked in the direction of the Connors Biological Laboratory. By the sea, at Tony's house. The blonde woman woke up from her slumber. Although the previous experience last night was not very pleasant, Tony also regrouped and did it again. Tony. There was no Tony at the bedside. She could only walk out of the room half wrapped in a thin shirt. As soon as she walked out of the room, she was shocked by the sea view that was introduced into her eyes. Is this the life of the richest man? Will I be able to live here in the future? Sure enough, you don't need to be talented, you can live a good life with a figure and good looks. The blonde woman glanced proudly at her figure. It was with this body that she became prosperous in this cannibalistic society. Now she even hooked the richest man. Just as she was secretly giggling, a mature female voice came from behind her. The clothes have been ironed for you, and the car has been called. It's just outside, where you want to go, the driver will take you there. The blonde woman turned around and saw a mature woman in smart workwear standing behind her. In her hand, she was still holding the clothes she wore yesterday. The blonde recognized the woman in front of her at a glance, Virginia Pepper Potts, Mr. Tony Stark's assistant. She can often be seen attending many social meetings and TV stations. With her capable acting style, under Tony's ridicule, there is a nickname of Little Pepper. The blonde woman knew that there was nothing going on with the two, but she had been able to work by Tony's side for so long. The sense of comparison in her heart suddenly rose, and she said proudly, "You must be the famous Miss Pepper Potts." "Yes, it's me. It's been all these years, and Tony still has you doing the dry cleaning for him." Pepper can see at a glance that the blonde woman in front of her is demonstrating to her, and she has no trouble in her heart. She even wants to laugh a little. But she still said calmly, "I do whatever Mr. Stark wants me to do. Occasionally including taking out the trash. If there is nothing else, you can go back now." The blonde woman was instantly angry, but under Pepper's aura, there was nothing she could do. She can only take the clothes and leave in despair. "See you next time I meet Tony." But what she didn't know was that Tony wouldn't eat a piece of cake twice. Pepper watched the blonde woman leave, turned and walked toward the basement. From what she knew about Tony, he must be tinkering with something in the basement factory now. "Hey, what are you doing over there?" Just as Pepper was about to go to the basement, Tony, who came downstairs, asked with a strange expression. Pepper also turned around with a puzzled face. "Aren't you modifying your car at this time?" "It was before, but now there are more important things." "More important things?" Pepper has a puzzled look on her face, and it is no exaggeration for Tony to say that he is the shopkeeper in Stark Industries now. So the important things he said should be bullish. Is it a model from another newspaper or TV station, or which company? "Tony, I think the more important thing right now is that you're flying to the other side of the world to negotiate a business," Pepper reminded while holding the document in her arms. "The above records are Tony's schedule." No, that doesn't matter. We have our own plane, so we can leave when we want. Even if I'm late, they have to wait. Tony said proudly. Rich and talented. He is willful. Then what are the more important things you're talking about? Look at this. Tony's hand slid over the tablet in his hand. A huge projection screen appeared in the center of the hall. What was playing on the screen was AI, who was photographed by the Stark industrial satellite when he was flying last night. What is this? Pepper looked at the Emperor's armor analyzed by Jarvis, and couldn't understand what Tony meant by putting this clip. I do not know either. But I have a feeling that if I can get this technology, the Stark military industry will reach its peak. At this time, Tony put more attention on selling arms. Where is he then? Pepper asked. Don't know, according to Jarvis transferred to the surveillance display. The place where this macaw first appeared was in the 13th block of New York City, and I've asked Happy to investigate. Pepper, I think you should help me investigate too. Use your connections in the company. Okay. Tony. But now you have to go before it's too late. Pepper is not interested in these, but she will do it naturally if Tony ordered it. Tony spread his hands helplessly. Okay. Jarvis, drive my car over. Okay, sir. I think Rhodes should have been waiting on the side of the plane for a long time. See you tonight. What Tony didn't know was that this trip to the Middle East would completely change his life. See you tonight. Pepper shook his hand. And pretty much the same scene also happened on the SHIELD mothership. As one of Nick Fury's left and right arms, Agent Phil Coulson arrived in New York City's 13th block early in the morning. Inside a black car, Coulson was wearing a black suit and looking around with sunglasses on. Damn, does that cool, explosive, mysterious macaw really come from this neighborhood? The 13th block of New York City, although not as central as the downtown area, is populated by a large number of rich people. But the people who live here are also the middle class with small wealth. At the same time, another fat figure on the street caught his attention. That fat man, like him, was wearing a black suit and black sunglasses. Sitting in the corner of a cafe. Although he was holding a cup of coffee in his hand, Coulson's attention was drawn to the look of flinching and looking around. That person seems to be Tony Stark's security guard Happy Hogan. What is he doing here? Could it be that? Coulson immediately thought of the reason, and immediately dialed a number with a specially made mobile phone. Hello, Chief Fury. Coulson, have you found the person I'm looking for? No, but Tony Stark's security is here, and I suspect they saw that Mac yesterday too. And then? Coulson, and then? Coulson's face froze. Right. And then? It seems that this has nothing to do with him looking for a macaw. Nick Fury on the other end of the phone said in a soft voice, if you can't find it, you can stay in the 13th block until you find it. Beep. Afternoon. State University. As the last got out of class, the bell rang. AI stood up slowly from the desk, picked up his school bag and prepared to go home. Early after school today, AI wanted to go shopping around to see if there were any stores that sold fitness equipment. Buy some for home workouts. Gwen, who had been sitting behind him, immediately stood up. Walking to AI's side, she said, I think you shouldn't be in a hurry tonight, right? How do you know? AI laughed. Because you are very slow to collect things today. AI looked at her with a smile, making Gwen a little embarrassed. She quickly explained, "It happens that I am free now, so I can show you more about the campus. By the way, I'll give you a chance to fulfill yesterday's promise." "But your father, didn't he say in the morning that your mother made delicious food for you to eat at home?" "He does it all the time. Actually, my mother rarely cooks." Gwen laughed. "That's all right, a beautiful lady like you invites me, and of course, I have no reason to refuse. You rejected me yesterday." There was a hint of displeasure in Gwen's tone. This made Ai's face embarrassed. It turns out that girls are so vengeful. He quickly changed the subject and said, "Then let's go to the campus first, before it's too late. Otherwise you won't be able to eat steak." Hearing that I still remembered the steak he promised yesterday, Gwen smiled. "Then let's go." The State University occupies a very small area. I followed Gwen around for nearly an hour. The sun slowly went down, and they almost circled the entire State University. It also made I sigh for a while. It is indeed the #1 university in New York City. All facilities are complete. Covers a variety of laboratories in different fields of science and technology. "Gwen, what kind of experiment is that over there?" I saw that a laboratory was relatively new compared to the other experiments he had seen along the way. "And it looks special. Because of other laboratories, they often have 3 or 4 floors. Only this one looks like a bungalow. It looks a bit out of tune with the surrounding buildings." "Dr. Connor's reptile laboratory is over there." Dr. Connor's. Hearing this familiar name, I had a faint guess. Could it be that Dr. Connors, who researched the regeneration of severed limbs and finally became a lizard monster? Yes, Dr. Connors used to be an excellent field doctor, but lost his right arm in a KB attack. He then took a back seat and started biological research. He came to State University 2 years ago and set up the reptile laboratory. After listening to Gwen's introduction, I was sure that he was the Dr. Connors who would become a lizardman in the future. "Since we're here, let's go in and take a look. I'll introduce you to a good friend, he's a genius." Seeing Gwen's appearance, I had already guessed 9 times out of 10 the identity of her good friend. Future Spider-Man Peter Parker. I followed in Gwen's footsteps and stepped into Dr. Connor's laboratory together. Push the door and enter. What catches his eye is a variety of glass cabinets that house the reptiles of today's world. Some I called by name, and some he couldn't. And Gwen, who was a girl, seemed not surprised by everything around her, and walked towards the interior of the laboratory. Soon, the two of them saw 2 figures in white coats standing in front of the test bench attentively. In the cage in front of the 2 was a little white rabbit whose front limbs had been amputated. One of the younger guys was holding a syringe with a green liquid in it. "I don't know if it's a drug or what." "Peter, are you ready?" "No problem, Dr. Connors." The brief conversation immediately allowed I to identify the identities of the 2. "They're doing important experiments, let's leave them alone," Gwen whispered in I's ear. I nodded. He also wondered if the genetic medicine in Peter's hand could really make this rabbit's severed limb regenerate. He saw Peter holding his breath, inserted the syringe into the rabbit's vein, and then pushed a whole tube of medicine into the rabbit's body. After doing this, the 2 carefully observed the rabbit's reaction. 10 minutes later, the rabbit still did not respond. Gwen also lost patience, and when she was about to go up to say hello, I grabbed Gwen. "Wait, that rabbit seems to have changed." After cultivating spiritual power, I's perception has surpassed that of ordinary people. He could feel something that seemed to really take place in the rabbit's body. But he can't say whether it's good or bad. In fact, not only Gwen, but even Dr. Connors was a little impatient. Logically speaking, a scientist like him should be very patient. But the non-stop failure in the past 2 years has completely exhausted his patience. Just when he was about to declare a new round of experiments failed, Peter immediately said, "Dr. Connors, look." Coniston's eyes lit up, and the rabbit in front of him began to respond. All along, the genetic medicines developed have either died outright or have no response. A few times, the more dangerous thing was that the rabbit's body burst open because it couldn't bear the regeneration speed. But this time, it was rare that the reaction slowly appeared after the injection. This gave Dr. Connors a lot of confidence. Is it finally going to be successful? They saw the amputated rabbit in the cage, and its body twitched involuntarily. Especially the amputated forelimbs swaying at a strange frequency at this time. It's as if something is going to grow from somewhere. Dr. Connors and Peter Parker had uncontrollable excitement on their faces. Finally. Is it finally going to be successful? The next moment, the rabbit twitches all over. Then it fell down. I, who was watching from the other side, also twitched the corner of his mouth. Because he knows that the rabbit is dead. That's it. In front of the test bench, Peter's excited face suddenly froze. And Dr. Connors, who was beside him, looked extremely complicated. He doesn't know if it's anger, frustration, or something else. He only heard Dr. Connors weakly announce, "The 4796th biological experiment failed." Peter slumped when he heard Dr. Connors' announcement. "Peter." Seeing Peter's lost look, Gwen spoke softly. "Peter." Gwen's soft voice immediately caught Peter's attention. "Gwen." Seeing I beside Gwen, a trace of jealousy flashed in his eyes. But it was very well hidden and did not reveal it. "Peter, Dr. Connors, are you okay?" Gwen is by nature a helpful personality. What's more, the two people in front of her, one is her friend for many years, and the other is her friend's mentor. "It's okay, I'm used to it," Dr. Connors said with a forced smile. Anyone present could see the complicated emotions beneath that smile. "Which classmate is that?" Dr. Connors also noticed I behind Gwen and asked curiously, facing this unfamiliar face. "This is I, a transfer student who just transferred to State University. The professor asked me to bring him to familiarize himself with the campus environment first." "Hello, I'm I." I stepped forward and said hello. Dr. Connors and Peter also introduced themselves politely. Then Dr. Connors said, "Peter, your friends are here. You treat them first. Let me clean up here." "But, Doctor." Peter wanted to stay and help, but seeing Connors' appearance, he knew he needed to be alone right now. "Gwen, I. Let's go outside." Gwen and I also nodded. Before leaving, I glanced at Dr. Connors, who was on the table sighing helplessly. Now, his mind is on the verge of being twisted. It's only a matter of time before becoming a lizardman. Laboratory door. "Peter, is Dr. Connors all right?" Gwen asked worriedly. Peter smiled bitterly. "It's not the first time that such an experiment has failed. I believe the doctor can cheer up. By the way, Peter, there's a science fair at Osborne Industries in 3 days. Would you like to join us?" Gwen suddenly remembered that there was such an event sometime later. Peter's tired eyes suddenly lit up, and then asked, "Gwen, are you going to participate too?" "Of course, you also know that I love scientific research," Gwen replied with a smile. "Science fair at Osborne Industries." RAI's heart moved. Isn't that the beginning of Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man after being bitten by a mutant spider? It seems kind of interesting. Then, Peter asked abruptly, "What about you, RAI?" I also suddenly remembered this matter. "I haven't told RAI about it yet," Gwen said a little embarrassedly. At the same time, she looked at RAI subconsciously, wondering if RAI would like to go with her. "Compared to these, I prefer to stay at home and read." Hearing RAI's answer, Peter didn't know why he was overjoyed. And Gwen's eyes flashed a hint of loss. RAI did not go. "Isn't it just me?" by Gwen's side. But before Peter finished his beautiful fantasy, RAI continued, "However, Osborne is a leading enterprise in life science research. I've also been reading a few books from their company lately, to see if it might give me some insight." This reason was of course made up by RAI, he just wanted to witness the birth of Spider-Man. Now that he has traveled to this universe, he still wants to see these historic moments. And when they heard RAI wanted to go, Gwen and Peter's hearts were different. "Peter, that's the deal." Seeing Gwen so happy, Peter could only smile and nod. It would be better if RAI didn't go. Of course, RAI didn't know what Peter was thinking at this moment. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. In RAI's view, Peter is too virgin. This also indirectly caused the people around him to have accidents one after another after he became Spider-Man. Even the Gwen family has. For such people, it is best not to get in touch with them too much. "Peter, RAI and I are going to go for a walk again. Would you like to go for a walk with us? I think you should find some time to relax, and so does Dr. Connors." Peter shook his head resolutely. "No, the doctor is inside alone. As his student and assistant, I think I should accompany him to summarize the reasons for the failure of the experiment." Gwen could only nod her head. When she came out just now, she also observed Dr. Connors, who was lost. Peter was the only one who could comfort him now. After the two exchanged a few more words, Peter turned around and walked back in the direction of the laboratory. RAI also followed Gwen away. Not long after the two left, Peter slowly walked out of the corner of the laboratory and looked at RAI's back. "Just you wait, as long as my experimental research is successful, I can go to dinner with Gwen too." RAI accompanied Gwen towards the school gate. "This is Gwen slowly speaking. Peter has lived a very difficult life since he was a child. And I'm one of his few friends, and he's also one of my few good friends." RAI didn't speak and quietly listened to Gwen's story. It also lets him know the life experience of this Peter Parker. When he was a child, his parents entrusted Peter to his uncle Ben Parker because of a long trip. This is very different from what I knew about the plot. Now Peter lives in the house of Uncle Ben Parker, but because Ben Parker and his wife are not young, they can only get a pension and make money by doing some casual work. Therefore, Peter's life is also very poor, which has led to his low self-esteem in this state university, which is full of giants. The two quickly walked to the school gate. Gwen immediately said, "Okay, we've finished visiting the campus. Now it's your turn to fulfill your promise." RAI smiled and said, "Of course, but I just came to New York and I don't know which steakhouse is better." "I know, there's a steakhouse on the 13th block that's pretty good." RAI was taken aback. Is it such a coincidence? Isn't it downstairs in his home? With curiosity, I said, "Then let's go, the beautiful Miss Stacy." Gwen covered her mouth and smiled. "Of course, Mr. I. 13 blocks. Inside a black car. Coulson was holding a coffee in one hand and nibbling on a hamburger in the other. All day today, he has wandered around and researched all the information he could find. Then got nothing. Coulson felt a headache when he thought of his boss scolding him. Does such a thing really exist? Coulson recalled the Makar in the video in his mind. Handsome. Domineering. A man's dream. In a restaurant not far away, Happy, who also came to investigate this matter, smiled and looked at a steak that was just served. With a knife and fork in hand, he enjoyed it deliciously. Coulson watched this scene and suddenly felt that the hamburger in his hand was not delicious at all. Both work for people. But why is the difference so big? Taking a bite of the hamburger forcefully, he continued to observe the situation around him. At this time, a taxi stopped at the entrance of the restaurant, and a pair of handsome men and beautiful women got out of the car. Young people's life. I also went out to dinner with a little girl a long time ago. Looking at the two people getting out of the car, Coulson recalled that he was so romantic back then. At a young age, he also takes beautiful girls to eat. Have a drink in the evening. Everything fell into place. But this kind of life is doomed to miss him since he joined SHIELD. The two people who got off the taxi not far away were I and Gwen, who had just come out of school. Is this what you're talking about? Gwen nodded. Yes, their family cooks the best steak in New York. What a coincidence. I sighed in his heart. Because across from this store is where he lives. The receptionist at the door led Gwen and I into the restaurant. Gwen skillfully ordered the steak set. I, who is not very interested in Western food, ordered the same set menu as Gwen. As for the drink that enhances the relationship, then basically don't think about it. In this country, most venues don't sell to teenagers under 21. You are a nation, right? I nodded, yes. Then, are you from Eastern country? That's right, I can tell you anything you want to know. Gwen immediately asked curiously, I heard that there are a lot of delicious food there, and I can't eat it all in a lifetime. Is it true? Facing Gwen's question, I smiled. Sure enough, girls are more interested in food. Indeed, our food culture is endless. Then, do you know how to cook? I can cook some. Hearing I's answer, Gwen's eyes suddenly lit up. At this moment, I's eyes narrowed as he looked at a TV hanging not far away. Gwen also saw the change in I's eyes and looked behind her. In the live broadcast room of the news channel on TV, a photo of Tony Stark was released. The hostess held a manuscript in her hand and read, Tony Stark, a patriotic businessman and a genius scientist of Stark's industry, is testing new border defense weapons in the Middle East in the afternoon. After the weapon test, Tony Stark was attacked by KB on the return convoy, and his whereabouts are currently unknown. At this moment, a fat figure in the corner by the window suddenly bounced from the seat, Ofuhashke. This move caught everyone's attention. I also looked over curiously, and immediately recognized the person. Happy, Tony's friend, the driver and the bodyguard. But why is he here? After reading the news, Happy became restless. He still remembered the task that Tony gave him. Now he is more concerned about Tony's safety. After throwing down a few beautiful knives at random, he picked up his clothes and ran outside. This scene was also seen by Coulson outside. He, who was guarding outside, naturally did not know the news that was being broadcast inside. Seeing that Happy was so flustered, he thought that Happy had found important information about the macaque. Immediately spit out the hamburger that was half stuffed into his mouth. Pfft! Suddenly, Gwen, who was sitting opposite Ai, covered her mouth and smiled. It made Ai curious. What are you laughing at? Gwen pointed to the outside. Look, don't the two people look alike in a hurry? Even the clothes. Ai looked in the direction Gwen pointed, and immediately recognized the person Gwen was talking about. Agent Coulson. If Happy appeared here, it was a coincidence, or he came here to eat. But why is Agent Coulson here? One of them is loyal to Nick Fury and the other is loyal to Tony Stark. According to the current timeline, there will be no intersection between the two. Ai's eyes narrowed, remembering the incident of flying around wearing the Emperor's armor last night. He immediately understood. It seems that I have been captured by satellite surveillance. Next time I have to keep a low profile. It's not that Ai is afraid, but that he doesn't want to have too much of a relationship with these official organizations. One is trouble. Second, he doesn't like these people very much. In this group of people, no one was a good person. Anyway, Ai's rule is that as long as no one provokes him, he will not take the initiative to provoke others. Coulson outside the door didn't attract Ai much attention. Judging from the expression he made just now, he should have only locked the range where the Emperor's armor appeared, and he had not been thoroughly investigated. Compared to him, Ai paid more attention to the information on the TV. Tony has been captured by the Ten Rings. He may be undergoing rescue surgery right now. As long as he returns to announce the cessation of weapons production, his plan can begin. Are you interested in Stark? Gwen asked curiously. Ai smiled and said, he's the richest man. Wouldn't you take a second look at the information about the disappearance of the richest man? Gwen shook her head. I don't like this guy. Why? Although the media described him as a patriotic businessman, a pacifist. But these are just rhetoric. I feel like he's more of a... Gwen tried to find a suitable word. What? I asked curiously. A tool man who only knows how to produce various weapons of destruction. Inside the Connors biological laboratory. Peter picks up the mess. He bought a hamburger and put some food in front of Connors. Doctor, eat something first. Continuing to work without eating something will lead your body to collapse. Only when you have the energy can we continue experimenting. Connors smiled helplessly. No, Peter. This may be our last experiment. Peter, who was eating a hamburger, suddenly stiffened, not understanding what Connors meant. Doctor, what do you mean? Peter, I think you know. My experiment is funded by the school and Osborne Industries. But in the past few years, my experiments have not made any progress at all. The Osborne industry and schools have started to issue an ultimatum. If I can't make substantial progress within a week's time. Having said that, Connors paused, his expression complicated. Peter also thought of what Connors would say next, but he didn't want to believe it. But Connors took a deep breath and added, the Osborne industry and the school will withdraw my funding. Recycle all my current experimental research results. After saying the last word, Connors slumped on the sofa as if he was exhausted. He also understood in his heart. He has been experimenting for 2 years, but there is no real progress. How could it be possible in the last week to successfully develop a genetic medicine that can regenerate a severed limb? Dr. Connors, don't we have a chance? After speaking, Peter's voice also became much smaller. Obviously, he also has no confidence that such a drug can be developed within a week. But this is his only chance to make a name for himself. He didn't want to give up either. But can the current predicament be overcome? Peter's heart was also in the dark. The laboratory suddenly fell silent, except for the rustling sound from the glass cabinet. Peter, go back first. It's been a long time since you went home early to accompany your uncle and uncle. But, Doctor. Dr. Connors smiled and said, don't worry, I'm fine. You go back first, and I'll sort out the experimental data over the years. Maybe there will be special gains. Peter finally nodded hard. Compared with his own comfort, what Dr. Connors needs now is to calm down and think. When Peter left, Connors was the only one left in the laboratory. Connors scratched the empty sleeve on his right hand, and sighed, alas. Then he stood up and looked at the test bench, the rabbit that had just died. Suddenly, Connors' pupils shrank sharply. How is this going? Although it is very subtle, Connors believes that he is not wrong this time. In the amputated front limb of the rabbit, the muscles there seem to be beating. Connors immediately rummaged through the test bench. Find a magnifying glass and put it in front of the rabbit. Carefully observe the position of the muscle beating. At this moment, Connors was sure that he was not mistaken. Later, Connors found the stethoscope by rummaging again. Immediately put the stethoscope on the rabbit's heart. When he heard it, an extremely subtle beating sound came from the front of the stethoscope. This time, Dr. Connors couldn't hold back his smile any longer. Ha ha ha, I succeeded. I finally succeeded. I knew there was nothing wrong with my decay formula, it was a matter of dose, it was a matter of dose. Ha 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 tilde. Connors' laughter lingered throughout the laboratory. Incredibly cheerful. 13 blocks. I took Gwen out of the restaurant, both of them were full. Thank you, it's a pleasant dinner. Me too. I said. Of course, I was more happy to see Tony's news. The discovery of Agent Coulson and Happy was a windfall. Then I think I should go back. Gwen shyly fiddled with her fingers and said to I. Since we're here, are you sure you won't come to my house? Your home. Aha. I pointed to a luxury apartment opposite. You mean, you live on this? But aren't you? Gwen realized she said something rude. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I smiled and said, who stipulated that orphans must have no money? Come on, go up and sit down. Inviting friends to sit at home for a while is also one of the fine traditional cultures of my country. Okay, I also want to wonder what a boy like you is like at home. Lead the way, Mr. I. The scenery here is so beautiful. On the balcony, Gwen blew the evening breeze. Her golden hair fluttered in the wind, which looked particularly charming in the night scene. I poured out 2 cups of warm water from the house and handed a cup to Gwen. The tea I ordered hasn't been delivered yet, so I only have water here. Gwen took the water from I's hand with a smile and said, it's fine, it's a pity that there is no wine. Your dad's a policeman, if you drink, he'll arrest me. Gwen chuckled and then said, you know what? Dad was my idol when I was young. Oh. What about now? Now, I think he's annoying and always likes to bother me. You know, because of his overprotectiveness of me, I haven't had a boyfriend since junior high school. There aren't even any good friends of the opposite sex. This really surprised I. Guys, does that mean Gwen in front of me? Still a baby. In a society as open to the extreme as this country, Gwen can still remain clean and pure at this age. It was true that I was a little surprised. But that's fine too, isn't it? Maybe your dad just wanted to protect you. I felt that George did a good job. He saw Gwen raise the corners of her charming mouth and said proudly, I don't need his protection. Let me tell you a secret. Secret? When I was a child, I regarded my father as an idol, so I hope that when I grow up, I can punish the wicked and uphold justice like my father. Even now, this idea has not changed. So I have learned some boxing skills in private. The average person may not be able to beat me. I's face was stunned. Dude, is this still the helpless Gwen Stacy he knows? Looking at I's expression. I know you don't believe it. No, I'm not disbelieving. I was just surprised that a girl like you has such a side. I didn't know what to say. Contrast. But that doesn't seem quite right. Gwen reached out and took the water in I's hand. Then put 2 glasses of water on the table on the balcony. Then she began to take off her thin coat. I's eyes widened. Good fellow, are people in this country so direct? I'm not ready yet. And we're on the balcony. Although high and they can't see it. But it's not soundproof. Soon, Gwen took off her coat. And tied her hair up and changed into a smart hairstyle. Gwen, what are you doing? As soon as I's voice fell, he saw Gwen's eyes condensed. A punch suddenly swung out at him. Ha! I stepped back, and Gwen's fist brushed the tip of I's nose. Interesting. Gwen's movements, impeccable power. Not only has it been practiced, but it's also a very powerful one. How's it, I? Do you believe me now? It just so happened that I also wanted to try. After cultivating his spiritual strength, the subtle improvement brought about could make him stronger. Although the strength of the flesh has not increased. But I was confident that Gwen couldn't beat him. If you punch me, I'm afraid it won't be convincing. Ahem. Gwen raised an eyebrow. A few more punches hit I. Several times in succession, I narrowly avoided it. Is that kung fu? Gwen's competitive spirit was also aroused at once. I didn't expect you to know martial arts. Then I'm going to attack with all my might. Good. On the balcony, Gwen attacked with all her might. But every time she thought she was going to hit I, she would be avoided by I with subtle movements. This also made Gwen more and more anxious as she continued punching I. The slow punching rules are all messed up. It was also at this time that I found the opportunity to counter Gwen's punch. A punch slammed into Gwen's face. Ah! Gwen subconsciously closed her eyes and exclaimed. But the next moment, there was no feeling of pain. Only then did she slowly open her eyes and sneak a glance. She found herself particularly close to I at this time, and I's hand stayed in front of her. And his body was stuck to her. She can even feel the smooth and long heat of the other party. Gwen couldn't help but blush. She is already fair-skinned, and her face is even more beautiful when she is red. I smiled and flicked Gwen's forehead lightly. You lost. Then the two separated, leaving Gwen standing sheepishly. After a while, the red glow on her face did not disappear. Speed, strength, and accuracy are enough. It was nice. I praised her. But you lied to me, and I couldn't hit you at all. Do you also know martial arts? Gwen turned and asked with wide eyes. I said matter-of-factly, no, I just react faster. If it's other people, they might have been lying on the ground begging for forgiveness from the start. Hearing I's praise in disguise, Gwen's mood suddenly improved a lot. Walk over to the table and pick up a glass of water and drink it. I didn't have time to remind her, and Gwen was finished with the glass of water. What's wrong? Is there anything on my face? That glass of water, it's mine. Gwen blushed and said, no. It's okay. We are friends. With that said, she herself had no confidence in her tone. I smiled slightly, walked to the table and picked up another glass of water to drink. You. Gwen's face was even redder. It's okay, we're friends. Ahem. It sounds fine, but it seems to have a big problem. Tonight, I also saw the unknown side of Gwen. Don't you really know martial arts? How about teaching me some? Gwen shifted the subject and asked again. No, at least not now. So you mean you'll know later? Maybe in the future I will be able to learn and master something like mixed martial arts. I've been looking for a long time in New York City, but I haven't found someone who can teach me, so if you know someone, remember to introduce me. You're so strong, do you want to continue practicing? I love that feeling of exercising, if my father hadn't allowed it. Maybe I'll be a cop fighting criminals in New York City too. I smiled and did not speak. That would be too dangerous. Oh my God, it's already so late. As Gwen picked up her coat, she glanced at the time on her phone. And she found out that it was already more than 8 o'clock in the evening. Although sometimes she had activities. It was the first time she had come home so late. I think I should go back. See you tomorrow. I'll send you. Downstairs. Coulson was back in the 13th block again. He thought there would be some clues, but when he tracked Happy to Stark Industries, he only found that it was Tony's unknown life and death that made Happy so nervous. Because the last time the mysterious Mac appeared at night, Coulson had to continue to investigate here at night. That's the young couple from before. Young people's lives are really good. Looking at I and Gwen who came down from the upper floor, Coulson had a look of envy on his face. Then I'll see you tomorrow, I think I should be responsible for the end. You are such a beautiful girl, I have to personally watch you come home to be at ease. Gwen's heart was pounding hearing these words. And she didn't reject his goodwill. After I stopped a taxi, the two got into the car together and went to Gwen's home. In the car, I felt a pang of complaint in his heart. Come back soon, Tony. Whether I can drive a luxury car or not is up to you. At the same time, a prompt sounded. Your frog cub sent you a travel photo, click to see it. I was overjoyed, and the game interface was immediately opened in his mind. An envelope-like icon appears. After clicking on it, a photo slowly appears in front of the game interface. This man is in the photos. His frog cub stood at the forefront. Behind the frog cub, a sexy blonde beauty holds a submachine gun in her hand. Behind them, there was billowing smoke. And mountains of corpses. This is the world of Resident Evil, and that woman is the heroine Alice. And those behind them are zombies. Based on the information provided above the photo, our AI immediately judged the world in which his frog cub was now located. Resident Evil is a dangerous world with endless zombies. If you are accidentally scratched by that group of monsters, you will be infected with the T-virus, and then you will become a zombie. Damn. In this case, if that stupid baby of his is accidentally infected, it will not turn into a zombie frog cub when he returns to the game, right? System, my frog cubs won't be infected with the T-virus, right? After AI finished asking worriedly, he saw a prompt pop up on the game interface: frogs will be injured when traveling the dimensions, but they will not be infected with viruses and will not be fatally injured. Once a fatal injury is taken, the frog cub will teleport directly back to the in-game to heal. Wait until the injury is healed, or if the injury has recovered to a certain extent, before going out to travel again. So please, the owner of the frog, prepare the salute for the frog cub before each trip. After reading the above tips, our AI was relieved. At the same time, our AI also decided in his heart that the next time his frog cub returned, he must equip him before he travels. After all, in the fictional worlds with high danger coefficients abound. If his frog cub was seriously injured in some world that day, he would have to die of heartache. The taxi drove quickly, and it didn't take long to get to Gwen's doorstep. Gwen opened the car door next to her, turned to our AI and said, "Bye-bye, I had a great day. Next time I want to eat the food you make." Our AI nodded, "Definitely." The weather was a little cold at night, and Gwen tightened her clothes and went home. Our AI said to the taxi driver, "Send me back." Then George pushed open the door and saw Gwen returning from outside, while his sharp eyes also saw the figure sitting in the back of the taxi. Although some of the lights are a little dim and he can't see the looks. But with years of experience as a criminal policeman, he was sure that this figure must be a young man who greeted Gwen in the morning. "Looks like you had a great night." George looked at Gwen, who was slowly approaching, and smiled. In fact, he was not opposed to Gwen's diplomatic friends of the opposite sex. It's just that all along, the boys who are close to Gwen are plotting something against her. Only the teenager in the morning made George's impression quite good. And he also knew how to send his dear daughter home. George's impression of AI was even better. "You know, the night in New York is not so peaceful. Dad, it seems that you are quite free today, and you came home so early." George sighed and said, "No, I think you saw the news as well, that big talent from Stark Industries is missing. Didn't he disappear in the Middle East? You're the director of New York, what does that have to do with you?" While accompanying Gwen through the door, George explained, "This bunch of damn rich people, the slightest incident can make the city stormy. Today almost all the journalists from the country went downstairs to Stark Industries. Maintaining law and order is much more tiring than catching thieves." Gwen nodded knowingly. Suddenly, it seemed that our AI was also quite interested in this matter in the afternoon. It seems that it is really a matter of rich people, and everyone will care more or less about them. Inside the taxi. On the way back, our AI picked up his mobile phone and continued to look at some information about New York City. He wanted to see how different the world was from the Marvel he knew. Although the information available online is limited. However, he can analyze a lot of information through a small amount of data. In New York City, for example, there are 3 giants in the financial world. One is Stark Industry, which made its fortune in the military industry and became the richest man, and the person in power is Tony Stark. The second is Osborne Industries, which focuses on life sciences, and the person in charge is Norman Osborn. And the last one, and the most interesting one. Wilson Grant Fisk, the leader in all of New York City's black industrial chain and underground trading. And the people on the road are more accustomed to calling him Kingpin. On the surface, Kingpin is active in high society as an investment entrepreneur. In fact, what grew out of his feet was the darkest side of New York City. Of course, none of this was important to AI. The information he investigated was only that he wanted to know a little more about the world, nothing more. Just as AI was flipping through the information on the internet, the taxi driver slammed the brakes. AI leaned forward, and his mobile phone almost flew out. "What's wrong?" "Sir, I don't think I can send you to the designated place. I think we should turn around." The taxi driver's tone was tinged with a hint of trembling. AI's brow frowned, and he looked ahead through the interval between the main co-pilots. He saw 7 or 8 people in black jackets, and at this time they were getting a few locomotives to block the road. And the group of people held all kinds of instruments in their hands, and their bodies were covered with all kinds of strange graffiti. Isn't this a blatant roadblock? No wonder the taxi drivers are so scared. This is the only way to the 13th block, and this group of people is guarding here, obviously trying to rob the rich people in the 13th district. AI smiled faintly, took out a few US dollars from his arms and paid them to the driver. "Just send me here, my home is not far in front. It's too far if we take another detour, and I'm afraid of trouble." After paying the bill, AI opened the car door and got out of the car. The taxi driver looked at this teenager and thought there were really people who were not afraid of death this year. Without saying anything after taking the money, the throttle is pressed and the steering wheel is twisted. With a beautiful tail flick, the taxi instantly completed the U-turn and flew away. The corners of AI's eyes twitched as he watched this scene. Good guys, can the desire to survive make people become a racer? He really underestimated this taxi driver. And the group of gangsters slowly walked towards AI, ignoring the fast taxi driver who was running. Their target was the other people in the car from the start. How much money does a taxi driver have? At this point in time, the only people who can go to the 13th block from here are the rich people who live on the block. Looking at this group of people with great momentum, I raised one hand. "I hate to deal with trouble, but if you are looking for death, that's another story." After saying that, the game interface in his mind opens. Several of those who were approaching AI were all full of sneers on their faces. They don't just ask for money. What they prefer to do to these rich people is to beat them up hard. Then rob them of all their valuables. If only clothes were high-end goods. They also don't mind stripping their target naked and throwing them in the trash. And in their eyes, the teenager in front of them, what's on his body are all high-end goods. Plus that handsome look. Maybe he can also be sold in the red light district that does special services. Boy, hand over everything you have. The hooligan in the middle raised the baseball bat in his hand and threatened. "You want to rob me? Then come and seize it if you have the ability to take it." AI sneered. This group is quite good at choosing a position, and this section of the road is just not monitored. That is to say, they can be solved with impunity. Just when he was about to take out the Emperor's belt and summon the Emperor's armor, suddenly, he felt something and raised his head to look up into the sky. AI's eyes narrowed. At the edge of the building, there was a figure standing there. Seemed to be watching everything that was happening below. One of the hooligans also sensed AI's strange appearance and looked up, following Ai's gaze. Suddenly his face changed, and he shouted in horror, "Be boss! There's someone up there!" When the hooligans heard this, they all looked up. However, above the roof, there was nothing at this time. Nothing. The leader thought he had been teased by his subordinate and angrily gave him a kick. "Fuck. Polish your eyes a little next time if you don't want me to dig your eyes up and sell it for money." "Yes. I'm sorry, boss." The leader didn't bother to pay attention to him and continued to raise his weapon toward Ai. He threatened, "Do you take out the money yourself, or do we help you?" At this time, Ai stood calmly in the same place. The idea of summoning the Emperor's armor had been abandoned. Because someone will help him clean up this group of rubbish. When the leader saw Ai, who had a calm face and did not take him seriously, he immediately lost his temper. What he is most unaccustomed to is the lofty eyes of others. But the next second, he saw Ai raise his finger and point behind him. The leader subconsciously looked behind him. By dim street lights, a man in red tights and a red mask stood there. The man in red held double sticks in his hands and looked in their direction. The leader was momentarily stunned, and with a trembling voice, he said, "DD Daredevil." When his subordinates heard him, all their expressions also changed at the same time, and they all turned to the direction of the Daredevil. One by one, they looked nervous and faced Daredevil. It was as if the Daredevil in front of them was not a single person, but an army that surrounded them. Seeing the ugliness on the faces of this group, I couldn't help but smile. Perfect interpretation of what is called bullying soft and afraid of hard. During this time, when I was learning about the news of New York City, he saw the news about Daredevil. He is a superhero who has only recently appeared in New York and is active in fighting criminals at night and upholding justice. His real identity is Matt Murdock, a blind lawyer at a New York law firm. During the day, he helped his client fight the case as a lawyer to get justice. And at night, he transforms into a daredevil to fight evil. So when he appeared, I knew that he had saved a lot of trouble. Well, sure enough, the city needs superheroes. The daredevil standing under the street lamp twisted his neck and then said, "It looks like tonight I'm going to be busy again. You all don't chicken out. We have many people. Don't be afraid of him." The hooligans were coaxed by their boss, and they were like a soldier that got injected with chicken blood. Their pale faces become red and their eyes also turn red as if their lives depend on this moment. A group of people suddenly picked up their weapons and headed towards the daredevil. The daredevil held his double stick and rushed into the crowd. Although he is blind in both eyes, his 5 senses got enhanced. So night and day were the same for him. Whenever Daredevil dodged an attack, the double sticks in his hands were like 2 spirit snakes, accurately attacking the enemy's key points. It's not fatal, but it causes enough pain to render them incapacitated for a while. Less than 2 minutes. All the hooligans lay down in pain, groaning and wailing. Only the leader, who had not moved his hands in the rear, was looking at this scene with a sluggish gaze. When he noticed that Daredevil had taken a step toward him, the baseball bat in his hand involuntarily fell to the ground. His feet were soft and he collapsed directly. Then I couldn't help but take a few steps back, frowning, and covering his nose. There was a smell of urine in the air. This guy, he was so scared of Daredevil that he pissed himself. Don't he come here, I am not afraid of you. Stay back. Don't come here. You know what? My boss is Kingpin and The daredevil's 5 senses were originally much stronger than those of ordinary people, and this pungent smell of urine was so disgusting that it made him take 2 steps back. And this is also misunderstood by the hooligan. He thought that the daredevil is afraid of his boss Kingpin. With a backer, he felt like his body became stronger. Picking up the bat on the ground, he stood up and proudly said, "That's right. My boss is Kingpin. Now kneel before me and I'll forgive you." I. Daredevil. The two of them had also lived for a long time, and for the first time they had seen someone play such a similar role in the dogfight. The daredevil really couldn't stand him, and directly picked up a bat on the ground and stunned him. Kingpin. Just right. What I'm investigating now is Kingpin. The daredevil man muttered, then turned his gaze to I and said curiously, "Were you scared just now?" "I'm a little scared, but didn't I see you coming?" I shrugged his shoulders. Daredevil is a smart man, otherwise he wouldn't have become a barrister in New York City. For I's remarks, which were obviously playful, he expressed deep disbelief, but he did not want to investigate deeply. In the evenings, try to go out as little as possible. New York nights aren't as safe as mornings. After saying that, the daredevil disappeared into the night. The next morning. The other side of the world. Somewhere in the desert region of the Middle East. Inside a converted cave. Tony, who was originally bright and beautiful, was now lying on a simple hospital bed unconscious. His chest was covered with bandages. Underneath the clothes was a wire attached to a large lithium battery. Tony in the hospital bed, his face looks in pain. I don't know if it was a nightmare or because of the body's stress response after the injury. After a while, Tony opened his eyes violently. The discomfort in his nasal cavity made him feel uncomfortable for a while. After touching it, he found that there was a catheter. After pulling it out, every part of his body hurt, as if it was about to fall apart. When he was about to roll over and get out of bed, he found that his body was covered with bandages. There was also a wire. What the hell is this? Tony couldn't figure out what the situation was. He can only tear open the bandage on his body with force. If I were you, I would never do that. In the dark corner of the cave, a ghostly voice came. Tony turned his head when he heard it and saw an older man was standing in front of the mirror shaving. Tony, who has not listened to other people's suggestions much, naturally does not stop his movements because of the man's words. He continued to tear the bandages on his chest. Soon, he saw that his chest was now a mess, covered with small wounds. In the very center, a circular metal object is embedded in it, and from the above wire is derived from it and connected to a large battery on one side. Tony watched this scene in disbelief. What the hell have you done to me? After a while, Tony was slowing down, sitting on the edge of the bed and asking the stranger in front of him weakly. Of course, he didn't know that the person in front of him was Yinsen, who had once met him at a technology conference. Tony's question made Yinsen smile. What did I do to you? I saved you. I've removed as much shrapnel from your body as I can, but there are still a lot of tiny pieces flowing into your veins. After some conversation, Tony finally understood that the electromagnetic device in his chest was for his life. Slows down the time it takes for debris to enter the heart. But it can only be delayed for a week. A week later, he would still be dead. Ironically, this explosive weapon is his own masterpiece. At this time, there was a rushing script sound coming from outside the door. Yinsen's face changed in an instant. Hurry up, get up quickly. Whatever I do, you do with me. Tony reluctantly stood up and put his hands on his head. Seeing Tony's face, Yinsen explains softly before the other person arrives, "They are the Ten Ring, and they attacked you and brought you here. Also, don't talk, I'll talk to them." Tony nodded, understanding that this was a bunch of KB elements. Soon, a slightly chubby KB member came to Tony with a group of brothers. After a while of conversation, Tony finally understood the reason for the kidnapping. They want him to make a highly lethal Jericho missile. "I won't do it." Tony's answer directly caused the Ten Ring gang to carry out a cruel and inhumane abuse that did not endanger his life. In the end, under Yinsen's persuasion, Tony can only pretend to cooperate first. Outside the cave, Tony, who was holding a lithium battery, saw that the weapons held by the KGB were actually weapons made by Stark Industries. He has always naively thought that the weapons he made should be bought by his country to build national defense and joint peacekeeping operations. Now he realized that he was very wrong. The minor leader of the Ten Rings said that he could provide any material Tony needed and would let him go if he developed the Jericho missile. Tony knew it was just their rhetoric. When the missile was studied, it was when he died. Inside the cave, Tony looked frustrated. Yinsen comforted and encouraged Tony on the side. "No matter what, they're going to kill me. Even if they don't kill me, I won't live a week." Tony never imagined that he would one day be so close to death. "So, it's a crucial week, right?" Yinsen's voice fell. For some reason, Tony's mind recalled the pair of mechs he had seen that day when the clouds and rain were raining. "If I could." Tony's dim eyes gradually regained their light. As a genius, a grand design unfolded in his mind. On the other side of the world, I, who was purchasing gym equipment, did not know that because of him, a different Iron Man is being born. Inside the Connors laboratory, Connors is constantly writing formulas on the blackboard, as well as new reagent production protocols. Messy hair, plus deep dark circles. Enough to prove that Dr. Connors didn't sleep all night last night. He found a breakthrough, and the excitement made it difficult to sleep. Peter walked into the lab only to find formulas on the blackboard. "Don't tell me, Doctor, you didn't come home last night and stay in the lab." Peter couldn't believe it. "Yes, Peter. I have found a crucial link, according to the deduction of the formula." There was absolutely no problem this time. Connors's tone was full of excitement. There was even a hint of madness. Peter, also aware of Connors's strange appearance, hurriedly said, "Doctor, I'll take care of the rest." "You should take a good rest." "No, I don't have to rest." "Peter, get ready to start mixing new genetic reagents. We're running out of time, hurry up." Peter knew that he could not persuade Dr. Connors and immediately threw himself into the experiment. For scientists, sometimes not sleeping all night is not a big problem. The two of them worked intensively in the laboratory. RAI's home. A fitness area was thus planned by him. "It's good that the house my parents bought is big enough, otherwise these things can fill this place." Today Gwen didn't stay with him but went to Osborne Industries and their docking science fair thing. Otherwise, he would have let Gwen put on some tight tracksuits and move with him here. Speaking of which, should I prepare a nice set of sportswear for her? I thought to himself. After all, with so many sports equipment, it is a bit wasteful to use it for only one person. That's right. Can't waste it. I thought of doing it and directly opened the computer to browse the women's sportswear. One of the sets of pink and white colors caught his attention in an instant. I pick you. The next night, I walked down, sweating profusely on the treadmill. While wiping sweat, he entered the game and harvested a wave of a 4-leaf clover. My frog cub has been on this trip for a long time. I sighed that he hadn't seen his frog cub for 2 or 3 days. I miss him a little. I don't know what kind of specialties and souvenirs my frog cub can bring me in that collapsed zombie world. After harvesting the clover, I sat down on the yoga mat and prepared to enter the cultivation of the mind. At this time, the beeping sound of the mobile phone that was put aside for charging sounded. I picked it up and looked at it, and it was a text message from Gwen. He hasn't seen her much in the past 2 days because she's been busy with Osborne Industries. I clicked on the text message. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, meet at the entrance of the school. Remember not to be late. Okay. I replied. Holding the functional machine in his hand, I had not been accustomed to the communication methods of this era until now. Obviously, the upper level of science and technology is so strong, but it has not been delegated to the people's livelihood at all. Not to mention the exclusive technology of Stark Industries, most of the technologies mastered by SHIELD are absolutely ahead of their time. And it can be applied to life. But they didn't do it. The people in power didn't care about their people, they only preferred to enhance their war weapons and their position. But I didn't care about that. It's nothing to do with him anyway. After returning Gwen's message, I began today's spiritual training. Inside the Connors laboratory, several groups of newly developed reagents are placed on the test bench. The amputated white rabbits are also all ready. Peter, compare the test data again and see if there are any problems. Dr. Connors asked. After 2 days and 2 nights of not closing his eyes, Connor was now excited inside, but the tone of his speech was with indescribable exhaustion. Peter compared the data and was sure it was okay. Worriedly, he said, "It's all right, Dr. Connors. Do you want to take a break first? It will take a day for the reagent to react." "No, I'm fine. I want to see my masterpiece born," Dr. Connors said, somewhat stubborn. In the next second, after saying these words, Dr. Connors sat back in his chair because of his lack of physical strength. Peter knew that this would not work. If Dr. Connors continues to hold on like this before the experiment result comes out, he definitely will fall in front of the test bench first. 2 days and 2 nights without sleep have led to Dr. Connors' mental weakness and extremism. Peter turned around and poured a glass of water for Dr. Connors. At the same time, without being discovered by him, a small white pill was thrown inside. "Doctor, let's have a glass of water first." Connors did not suspect his students and took the water directly. "Thank you, Peter." He also happened to be a little thirsty. He takes the water and drinks it all. Although there was a strange smell, Connors was now obviously much sluggish and did not react. "Thank you." Dr. Connors handed the cup back and continued to look at the genetic reagents on the table. After a while, Connors's eyelids had begun to bear the unbearable fight between the upper and lower eyelids. In the end, he finally couldn't hold on. "Peter, I think you're right, I should take a break. I'll sleep for 2 hours. Remember to call me later." Peter nodded. "Got it, Doctor." Before he could finish speaking, he saw that Connors was already sleeping soundly in his chair. Peter immediately brought a blanket to cover his body. In the lab, only Peter was left to record the test data. A night passed. Connors woke up from his chair leisurely. The sleep all night made him feel much better. Peter. Peter heard Connors's voice and immediately ran over. You're awake, Doctor. How long have I slept? 12 hours, Doctor. Peter looked at his watch and said, It's 7 a.m. Oh my God, it looks like I'm really tired. How are the experimental data recorded? Everything works fine, exactly as your formula deduces. Connors smiled in relief. It looks like we're about to succeed. Peter, you're tired too. You can also sleep for a while, and I will observe the rest. That, Doctor. Ha. Dr. Connors looked at Peter curiously, who had a look of wanting to say something. If you have something to say, just say it, Peter. We are not only teachers and students, but also very good friends. Peter thought for a moment and said, I want to attend the science exhibition of Osborne Industries. Is that all you want to say? Of course, you can go. It seems to be today, yes. At the current rate of reaction, we estimate that biological experiments will not begin until tomorrow. During this time, you and I can both relax. Peter's face was happy when he heard it. Then I will go first. Wait, Peter. Connors stopped Peter, then smiled and said, Dress yourself up. Gwen is there. Peter scratched his head in embarrassment. At the school gate, Gwen organized the students who wanted to participate in the science exhibition. This activity is not mandatory in schools. Any interested student can participate. I, on the other hand, was purely to join in the fun. Hi, Peter. The leading Gwen saw Peter hurrying in and said hello happily. Hell Gwen. Thankfully I am not late. If I can't get on this train, I can't go to Osborne Industries. It's good I caught up. Hi, I. Peter saw I and greeted him politely. I nodded and smiled. Good morning. Is Dr. Connors okay? Doctor, he's good. The experiment has made great progress. Peter said proudly. After all, once this experiment is successful, he will leave a strong mark in the history of life science research as an assistant. His identity will also be very different. Is he finally going to succeed? I muttered in his heart. It seems that after today, not only Spider-Man will be born, but even the Lizard Man will appear. It's a fateful enemy. Peter naturally didn't know what I was thinking at this moment. His eyes were on the body of the blonde goddess Gwen in front of him. Soon he would be able to go out to dinner with Gwen, not as a poor boy but as a student who made great contributions to society. Okay, everybody gets on the bus in an orderly manner, and we'll head to the Osborne Industrial Building and attend a science exhibition. Osborne Industries. Another large industrial company in New York City that's on par with Stark Industries. Unlike Stark Industries, which focuses on the development of the military industry, Osborne Industries is more focused on making breakthroughs in life sciences. Among them, Osborne Industries is best known for its technology of cultivating mutated animals and extracting the corresponding variant genes from them, with the aim of treating human diseases and increasing human lifespan. This is the information that I found on the internet during this time. A group of people soon came to the front of the Osborne Industrial Building. When they got out of the bus, someone took them inside for the tour. I walked with Gwen and Peter. The three had just gotten out of the car and were about to follow their guide into Osborne Industries when suddenly, they heard someone shout behind them. Peter. Peter turned his head and shouted with delight, Hey, Harry. I and Gwen also turned around. Harry stepped forward and glanced at Gwen. "Hi, Gwen. This is I, the new transfer student in our class." Harry held out a hand and shook I's. "Hello, I'm Harry Osborn." "Hello." I glanced at Harry. Naturally, he knew him, but the other party didn't know him. Harry Osborn. Osborn Industries heir, son of Norman Osborn. That is the Prince of Osborn Industries. He is also a good friend of Peter Parker. One of the reasons they were able to participate in Osborn Industries' science exhibition this time is because the industry has a lot of project cooperation with State University. The second was the result of Harry's discussion with his father. "Let's go. I think we should head in," reminded Gwen. Harry. At this time, the voice of a middle-aged man behind several people came. The middle-aged man in a suit came with a backpack in his hand. "You forgot your backpack." Harry took the backpack from his hand and explained to everyone, "Norman Osborn, my father." Norman glanced at them and said with a smile, "You are my son's classmates." Peter immediately said, "Yes, I once read your neuroscience study, and it was really great." Peter's eyes shone brightly seeing Norman Osborn because he finally saw his idol. "You understand it?" Norman was surprised. "Of course, I even wrote a report." Norman is as conceited as Tony because he's a genius too. Otherwise, how can he single-handedly establish Osborn Industry and achieve outstanding achievements in the life sciences? Peter was young, but being able to see his research was enough for Norman to look up to him. As for I and Gwen, he subconsciously chose to ignore them. "Is that so? I hope there's a chance we can sit down and talk about science together. Go in. You have limited time to visit today." Gwen whispered in I's ear, "When I communicated with him 2 days ago, he was also quite arrogant." I said indifferently, "Maybe all geniuses are like that." Before entering Osborn Industries, I thought about the vast and luxurious level inside. But when he actually stepped into the exhibition building of Osborn Industries, he was also shocked by the scene in front of him. The entire floor of the exhibition hall is filled with a variety of glass cabinets. The animals displayed in these cabinets don't have ordinary appearances. These are mutants bred by scientists at Osborn Industries. In front of each glass cabinet, there is a docent. When they passed by an exhibition cabinet, there was a person who explained the animals in the cabinet to them. Their experimental value and research direction. Compared to others listening while taking notes, I, like Harry, was completely uninterested in these things. "You don't seem to like these things very much." Harry saw I, beside him, did not follow with excitement as the others. "I just like to hang out, and it's not fun to stay at home all the time." Harry nodded. He agreed with I's point of view. The two of them walked at the end with a lack of interest. I also learned some interesting things about the upper class through Harry. Gwen and Peter walked at the forefront of the crowd. The two of them were very interested in these scientific studies. Now in front of you is a super spider bred by Osborn Industries. It combines the excellent genes of the first 3 spiders and is bred with new technologies of genetic recombination. There are only 15 of them in total. In front of everyone, there was a glass cabinet divided into 15 small lattices. In each glass cabinet, there is a bright red and purple spider. Although it is small, the net woven inside is unusually tough. Gwen, who took a closer look, suddenly frowned and counted carefully, then said, "There are only 14. "What did you say?" The docent was stunned. stepping inside right away. Sure enough, one from the grids was missing, leaving only 14 super spiders. I guess it was taken to be experimented on by the researchers. Okay, let's move on to our next visit. What no one noticed was that the little spider, which had been brightly colored at this time, was crawling into Gwen's backpack at a very fast speed along the hem of Gwen's pants. Even I, who was walking at the back, did not notice. Watching the crowd leave, Peter picked up his camera and took a few photos of the super spider. At this moment, a small black spider ran out of his arm. This little spider Peter knew was one of the 3 kinds of spiders just introduced by the docent. One of the super spider's genes belongs to it. It's just that it's just an ordinary breeding spider, not a mutant spider. Just as Peter was observing the spider in his hand, the spider unceremoniously bit its tiger's mouth. Peter was in pain and threw off the spider vigorously. Only the tooth marks on the tiger's mouth are left. Peter touched his hand. Fortunately, this spider is non-venomous. This small episode didn't attract everyone's attention. The group of people continued the tour. Soon the scientific exhibition was over. Although it is a science exhibition, Osborne Industries had no intention of showing off what really lies inside the treasure box to a bunch of students. After all, those are the foundation of Osborne Industries. After leaving the Osborne Industrial Building, the students went back to their homes. Harry had planned to invite them to his house with him. But Gwen was picked up by Officer George, who coincidentally just passing by. As for I, he said that there was still something to shirk at home. The 3 stood at the door of Osborne Industries. Harry, who was sharp-eyed, suddenly noticed that Peter's hand seemed to have a wound and asked, "Peter, what's wrong with your hand?" "It's okay, I accidentally bumped into something while experimenting." Peter casually found a reason and said. I looked at the wound on Peter's hand and thought about it. It seems Spider-Man is about to be born. I, who returned home, started his own training program. After a few exercises, he was sweating profusely. Just the amount of exercise in these few days has made his body appear with obvious muscle lines. Looking at himself in front of the full-length mirror, I nodded with satisfaction. Such an effect after training. I don't know if it's a benefit after crossing or because of the Emperor's armor. Whatever the reason, that's all good for him. After his exercise, I began to prepare tonight's meal. Although the food of this country is good, he still prefers the food he cooks. It reminds him of his country and home. At the same time, I was in his notebook, browsing the latest news about Tony. Now, Stark Industry has been in complete chaos. The news about Tony's death on the internet is even more bizarre. As a result, stock in Stark Industries has been declining. But I knew that now was not the time to start. He must wait until Tony makes that announcement. That's the best time to start his plan. Just as I was paying attention to the information on the internet, the prompt in his mind sounded. The Frog Cub is back, Tilda. The Frog Cub has brought you a souvenir, so please go check it out. I directly stopped paying attention to Tony's information. Opening the game. He turned off some inconsequential tips and set his sights on the souvenirs he most cared about. This time, the souvenir's icon style is like a book. On the surface of the book, there is a gun motif. Clicking on the icon and there, a message emerged. Book of Firearms, a souvenir from the world of Resident Evil. The heroine Alice's lifelong knowledge of firearms can be directly inherited after use. RAI's face was overjoyed, even other people's skills could become souvenirs to bring back. It's his first time seeing it. RAI's face emerged with a happy expression. The so-called skill does not overwhelm the body. Who would hate such a life-saving means? Besides, in this era when gun ownership is legal, not playing with guns is a bit low. Before I could inherit the book of firearms, the prompt tone continued to sound. Ding. The frog cub's mood did not seem to be very good, and it seemed to have encountered some troubles. It is recommended to help the frog cub solve its problem to avoid the complications of the next journey. My frog cub is not happy. I was a little confused, he still has his own mood. In the original minigame, it seems that there is no such setting, right? I closed the souvenir interface. Looking at the game interface, the frog cub is not outside the door, but at home. The frog cub is on the edge of the table, now with its hands wrapped around its chest. Its mouth is bulging, and there is a small white bubble on its small head. Inside the bubble is an angry red sign. It's so cute. What am I going to do? This made I a little embarrassed. Is it necessary to comfort the frog cub? He can do anything, but comforting people is not in his skill set. The host can directly ask the frog cub what happened, and then find a way to help the frog cub solve it. Hearing the prompt of the system, I tentatively asked the frog cub, "Little frog cub, what happened? Whoever annoys you, I will help you beat them up." The frog cub sitting at the table seemed to hear I's voice. Its two small hands waved quickly, looking quite silly with a hint of cuteness. It's like accusing of something. With the wave of the frog cub's hands, the original angry little icon also changed into a small frog head with eyes bent into a crescent. It shows that it's very happy. The little frog's head was followed by a small backpack. Immediately after, the two small expressions flashed a few times and changed again. The backpack behind the little frog's head turned into a small zombie head with a vicious face. Then the little frog's head changed from happy to shocked with an exclamation point. Two small expressions flashed regularly one after the other. I immediately understood what the frog cub wanted to express. It took the luggage that I had prepared for itself and traveled happily. As a result, it went to the world of Resident Evil and was hunted down by the zombies there. Frog Cub told I what happened, in the form of an emoticon, after it arrived in the world of Resident Evil. I watched intently. Apparently, the reason the Frog Cub was angry was on this trip. Soon, a third small avatar appeared, which was the head of a blonde girl. This is Alice. That obvious feature made I immediately recognize that this avatar represented the heroine Alice. After Alice appears, the Frog Cub and Alice swap positions. Then a red fork appeared on the zombie's head. In the small bubble were Frog Cub and Alice. Then both of them turned into smiling faces. I suddenly remembered the photo sent back by the Frog Cub not long ago, and the photo with Alice. Behind them was a pile of zombie corpses. It seems Alice saved you. The Frog Cub bent his eyes and nodded. But the next moment, the Frog Cub's expression changed from happy to angry. Originally, Alice and the Frog Cub, in the middle of the two small heads, a male head with sunglasses and a golden back suddenly appeared. This man is the main villain of the Resident Evil series. I's eyes narrowed. Immediately recognized who the male avatar was. Like Alice, he became the superhuman villain, Albert Wesker, after injecting the T-virus. Then Alice's head flashed and turned, blocking in the middle of Wesker and the Frog Cub. Then the two heads of Alice and Wesker collided. After several consecutive touches, Alice's head jerked back and knocked the frog cub out. Only the frog cub remained in the small bubbles. I suddenly realized, what you're angry about is that this big bad guy bullied you and your friend. You can't help, so you've been sent back by Alice. The frog cub nodded vigorously. I rubbed his chin with his hand, and then clicked on the games shop. Inside the game store, in addition to travel items, there are also various items to enhance the strength of the frog. To ensure that the frog cub has enough self-preservation power when traveling in the fictional worlds, a wide variety of goods are drawn down. He's been greeted by a variety of skill books and physique enhancement items. There are disposable ones, there are permanent ones. But they all have the same drawbacks. That is, it was too expensive. The point is that he only has more than 400 clovers left. Not enough to buy. The corners of I's mouth twitched and he asked, "Is there any other way for me to get the clover?" Yes, the host can obtain the clover through real money exchange. 10,000 US dollars equals 1 clover. Hiss. I instantly inhaled a cool breath. This way is called exchanging currency. This trademark is clearly called burning money. But looking at his frog cub that has turned from anger to grievance, I calculated his own property and plans to collect the stock of Stark Industries. I gritted his teeth and said heavily, "Charge 5 million. Recharge $5 million and get 500 clovers. Current clover number, 956. Looking at the soaring clover, I felt a pang of pain in his heart. Now, with a larger amount of clover than before. I quickly glanced at the enhancement items in the store that could make his frog cub stronger. Body of steel. Price, 250 clover. Type, disposable item. Item effect, permanently enhances the frog defense. Strength of an ox. Price, 250 clover. Type, disposable item. Item effect, permanently increases the frog's strength. If it were really the Resident Evil world, I think these two things would be more suitable for frog cub. I carefully weighed Wesker's combat effectiveness and chose the abilities that would be most cost-effective in the world of Resident Evil. After all, with his current clover, it was really expensive. Well, just buy these three. Weapon proficiency. Price, 280 clover. Type, disposable item. Item effects. Frog gains proficiency in all types of weapons after use, including heat weapons. Martial Arts Master. Price, 250 clover. Type, disposable item. Prop effect, after use, the frog will become a master who is proficient in the martial arts of various countries. Deadpool's double swords. Price, 260 clover. Type, weapon. Prop introduction. In the Marvel Universe, Deadpool Wade's Edmund alloy double sword is not only sharp but also incredibly hard. Even if it is bombarded by cannons, it will not be damaged. A total of 790 clovers are consumed. When he clicked to buy, I's 4-leaf clover balance was only 166. Immediately after, I bought 54-leaf clover bentos. Let the frog cub eat and drink enough to get back to the field. Oh my frog cub. I am bleeding heavily this time for you to enjoy your journey, so you must bring me some good things the next time you come back. I opened the inventory and equipped all the things he had just bought on the frog cub's body. When Deadpool's double swords were equipped, 2 long swords appeared behind the frog cub. That looks cute. Everything is ready for your next trip. Hopefully, the money was well spent. After putting the bento into the frog cub's backpack, I left the game. Before leaving, he extracted the book of firearms. I's mind was flooded with a series of firearms knowledge. He simply absorbed the amount of information in his mind. He sat on the yoga mat for some time, cultivating spiritual strength. Not long after practice, he heard a voice. The frog cub is going on a trip, Tilda. I couldn't help but laugh a little dumbly. Going on a trip already? Going out in such a hurry, it is obvious that he couldn't wait to take his revenge. Stupid boy, don't come back with injuries. Your father doesn't have the money to heal you now. Gwen's home. After dinner with her parents, Gwen went back to her room. She went with a learning attitude, not like I who went to hang out. So she also took a lot of notes. At the table, Gwen picked up the backpack with the notebook. When her hand reached in to get her notebook, she suddenly felt a sharp pain. Ouch! What is this? Gwen jerked her hand back and found 2 more small holes in the back of her hand as if she had been bitten by something. Then she saw that something seemed to jump out of her bag. Gwen exclaimed in horror and jumped out of her chair. In a hurry, she actually stomped on the unknown creature that jumped out of her backpack. It was now completely impossible to tell what it was. But Gwen didn't notice it and just glanced at the back of her hand. George, downstairs, hearing Gwen's cries, rushed upstairs. George pushed open the door of his daughter, Gwen's room. What's wrong? What happened? There was a bug that scared me. George glanced at the room, made sure there was nothing else unusual, and then said, "Do you need me to help you get rid of that bug?" "No, Dad. It's only because it was so sudden that I got scared." "Okay, my daughter is not timid and I know it," George said proudly. As he was about to leave, Gwen stopped George with her hand. "Dad, can you knock on the door next time you come into my room?" George, also aware of his recklessness, apologized. "I'm sorry, Gwen. I'll knock next time, call me again if you need to." Seeing George leave, Gwen observed her hand again. She took out the medicine box that she had placed on her desk and made simple disinfection measures. It was only when she looked down to treat the wound on her hand that she found that there seemed to be a lump of something under her feet just now. Gwen watched closely and determined that it was the unlucky bug that had been trampled to death by her own foot. "You bit me and I stomped you to death. We leveled it out." After cleaning up everything, Gwen began to look through today's notes. After a while, Gwen didn't know why, but the figure of I suddenly appeared in her mind. His upright features. Fascinating. "I don't know if I is free tomorrow. I want to go to his house for some of his homemade food." Gwen picked up her phone and prepared to ask. But a wave of nausea and dizziness hit her quickly. Was that bug poisonous? Gwen opened her mouth, trying to call George, but found that she couldn't shout, and her dizziness was getting worse. Soon, she fainted directly on her desk. Gwen, who fainted, had a strange dream. She dreamed that she had become a big spider, a very ugly spider. Then I appeared in front of her and was swallowed by her fiercely. No. Gwen wakes up from a nightmare. She found herself lying on the bed, covered in a quilt, while her body was already wet with sweat. What the hell is going on? Gwen got out of bed a little confused and headed downstairs. Downstairs at the table, George was enjoying his breakfast. Seeing Gwen come down, he smiled and reminded her, "Next time, if you're too tired to study, make sure to go to bed first. Sleeping at your desk, it's easy to catch a cold." When Gwen heard it, she asked, "Dad, did you come into my room again last night? Your mother brought you cocoa and, finding that you did not respond from knocking on your door, she went in. She found that you were sleeping at your desk. So I went up and carried you back to the bed," George explains. Gwen's mother came out of the kitchen and nodded, "Next time, pay attention to rest, and don't study so late at night." Gwen, however, looked puzzled and remembered what had happened last night. But when she looked at the back of her hand, smooth skin, without any wounds. Seeing her dazed daughter, she urged, "Why don't you change and get ready for dinner? You're late for school, you know." Gwen then noticed the clock on the wall. "Oh my God, I had my first class this morning." Gwen ran quickly upstairs. Just as she was about to reach the door of the room, she accidentally slipped her feet, and her whole body fell forward. In a hurry, Gwen's body twisted violently. After a rollover, she landed perfectly. Oh my God! Middle East. Inside the cave, Tony carefully injected energy into the reactor he had just studied. The circular reactor slowly bloomed into a soft blue glow under Yinsen's gaze. This miraculous technique made him stunned. He suddenly realized that the man in front of him was called a genius, which was demeaning to him. In such a desperate situation, such a thing can be created. Does this look a little like Jericho missiles? Tony explains, "It's a miniature arc reactor. There's a big one in my hometown, powering my factory. With this, I can stop the debris from entering my heart." Yinsen understood instantly. All the previous lithium batteries could do was delay the time it took for debris to enter the heart. If this reactor wants to stop it, it must exceed the power generation of lithium batteries by more than 10 times. "How much does it generate?" Yinsen asked curiously. Tony proudly said, "If I am not mistaken, it should be 3 billion joules per second." Yinsen was stunned. "Is this something that people can make? That's enough for you to live 50 times. Tony nodded, except that he had built the miniature reactor not just to stop the shrapnel. "That's right, or enough for a big guy to move for 15 minutes. Big guy?" Yinsen was a little confused. Then he saw Tony pull out several design drawings. These designs, Yinsen knew, were all drawn by Tony while working on the reactor. It looked like a weapon, and it looked like some kind of special armor. "We'll get out using this." "What is this?" Yinsen couldn't understand. "Pile them together, and you'll know." Tony put the design drawings together, and after passing through the light, the independent parts of each picture overlapped. Yinsen was stunned in an instant. "This? It's a set. Humanoid armor. It's amazing." He could only sigh like this. Tony patted him on the shoulder. "If it weren't for your reminder, I wouldn't remember what I saw that night. Only by building this thing can we escape from here." Yinsen nodded. "Does this big guy have a name?" Tony thought for a moment and then said, "Mark 1. Mark 1. Yinsen muttered the name and marveled at Tony's brain. As for being discovered, Yinsen wasn't worried. The people of the Ten Rings gang are all illiterate people who can't read 3 big characters, as long as the cover-up work is done well. The group would have thought the two of them were building the Jericho missile. "Okay, let's get started so as not to have too many dreams. Next, help me put this on first. I don't want to walk around with this thing anymore." Tony raised the small reactor in his hand and glanced at the lithium battery again on his body. In a police car. Gwen sat in the co-pilot seat, constantly observing her hands back and forth. What happened earlier in her room made her feel incredible. But Gwen didn't say it. She vaguely felt that this had something to do with her being bitten last night. It seems that some kind of change is taking place in her body. This made her a little uneasy. George, who was driving alongside, couldn't take it anymore and said, "If you want to put nail polish on, I won't object. As long as it's not too flashy." Gwen ignored George's complaints and instead asked, "Dad, did you find a wound on my hand yesterday?" "Wounds? Where? Are you injured?" George frowned and glanced at Gwen's hands. "There's nothing wrong." If he weren't driving, he would have taken a good look at Gwen's hand. Gwen, however, said uncertainly, "I remember being bitten by a bug." Bug? George was stunned and immediately remembered the incident that Gwen was frightened by the bug last night and said comfortingly, "I think you must have had a nightmare, child. Okay, we've arrived at your school. Get out of the car first, and I'll have to go to Stark Industries to maintain law and order." Watching Gwen get out of the car, George added, "If you're really scared, I'll buy you a bottle of pesticide when I get back at night." "No, Dad. I'm not afraid of bugs." With that, Gwen turned her head and left. On campus, Gwen thought carefully about what happened last night, and her thoughts were a little out of her mind. That she didn't even notice Peter walking beside her. Behind them, a few students found that Peter, who would only be bullied by them on weekdays, actually walked with the school's #1 beauty at this time. They couldn't help but want to tease Peter. Aura. One of them, holding a basketball in his hand, jerked in a throwing motion with all his might. And it was aimed at Peter's back. The ball flew, and they believed Peter would fall and be humiliated in front of Gwen. At the moment when the ball came out of his hands, they could already foresee Peter's spectacle. But the next moment, an unexpected scene happened. The ball would have hit Peter, but at this time, it actually stopped in midair. A muffled sound reverberated. The movement behind him caused Peter to look back, and he saw Gwen's hand blocking a basketball coming from behind him. "What are you doing?" Gwen grabbed the basketball and looked back at the three people behind her, and asked. The one that threw the ball in the middle could only pretend to be apathetic and not sound embarrassed. He said, "Nothing, the ball accidentally flew out by itself." "Really? Then come and get it yourself." Gwen stretched out the ball. Peter, next to her, reminded, "Forget it, Gwen." Gwen said, "Of course, didn't I just let him come over and take the ball away by himself?" The little bastard thought Gwen was afraid of him too and smiled as he walked toward Gwen, prepping to take the ball. Gwen instantly made a smashing ball motion. The little bastard was immediately frightened and protected his head. But nothing happened. This caused a burst of laughter from the students watching around as they pointed at him. "Give it back to me!" the little bastard shouted angrily. "Okay, take it yourself. Don't worry, I won't scare you anymore." Gwen smiled and reminded gently. The little bastard held the ball as fast as he could, ready to take it away. But he found that he could not move the basketball an inch of Gwen's hand with all his strength. Even Gwen herself was dumbfounded. What is happening? None of them knows. But the basketball seemed to stick to her hand. The little bastard felt that he had been completely teased by a girl like Gwen. Being humiliated in front of so many people. being ridiculed by so many people. Suddenly, his anger went up his head. He slapped Gwen's hand and threw himself toward her. Peter behind Gwen hurriedly reminded, "Be careful." Ah! The students watching around saw this scene. The timid girl shouted directly. But in the end, the anticipated slap didn't fall. Because I appeared in front of Gwen and grabbed the wrist of the little bastard. Dealing with this kind of person, I didn't have too much nonsense. He directly squeezed his hand. The sharp pain coming from the wrist made the guy cry out in pain. "Ah! Gwen, are you all right?" "It's okay, I'm fine." Gwen saw I coming forward. She smiled and said, "Actually, if you didn't come, I can solve it. I'm aware." With that being said, the look of joy on Gwen's face betrayed her. Obviously, she was very happy that I appeared and helped her. Although she can also solve it without him. Now, the feeling of being protected by I seems quite nice. I glanced at Gwen behind him and smiled. "Well, next time I will give you a chance to beat up the bad guys. But leave it to me for now." Gwen nodded happily. Home. On the side, Peter looked at I with some complexity in his eyes. He also wanted to protect Gwen in this way. But he didn't dare to take a step. With that said, I picked up the ball in Gwen's hand with his other hand. It was very easy to take the ball from Gwen's hand. "Here's the ball. Pick it up yourself." I threw it hard, and the ball flew in the direction of the school woods and, at the same time, flicked away the wrist of the little bastard. "Now you can fuck off." Feeling I's momentum, the three of them did not dare to continue their aggression, so they slipped in the direction where the ball flew past to pick it up. "Let's go, it's almost class time." After I's reminder, Peter looked at his watch and remembered that Dr. Connors was still waiting for him in the laboratory. "I'm sorry, I'm going to the lab right away because the doctor has a very important experiment." "Gwen, I'm going first." "Go, Peter, I and I are also about to go to class anyway." Looking at Peter's distant back, I thought. Has Peter's spider abilities not yet awakened? But according to Peter's character, even if he is awakened, he will not casually show his abilities in front of people without wearing a spider suit. Therefore, I didn't investigate deeply. At this time, I naturally hasn't found that Gwen beside him was the one who had awakened the spider's ability. Just now, thank you. I. Don't mention it. And didn't you say that you had the ability to solve it yourself? Of course, I believe you. Gwen smiled sweetly. This incident was also a little secret between the two of them. Except for I, no one else knew that she could also do martial arts. The two of them talked and laughed as they walked toward the classroom. In the conversation with I, Gwen would forget for a moment about the abnormalities that had occurred in her body since yesterday. Inside the Connors laboratory, Peter has put on his white coat. In front of him, there were 3 tubes of genetic reagents that had just been made. And on the table, there was a small white rabbit that had just had an amputation not long ago. "Peter, report on the health of the rabbit." "From the result of the blood draw, there's no problem. The cross-section of the amputation is intact, no infection occurred, and it meets the requirements of the test." "Okay, Peter. Get ready to start." There are a total of 3 tubes of genetic reagent that have been completed. As long as it is successful, our research is totally complete. This time Dr. Connors looked confident. "Got it, Doctor. So let's get started." Peter put on his gloves and picked up one of the tubes of reagents. With Dr. Connors nodding, Peter slowly shoved the tube of reagent into the rabbit's body. Okay, the next step is to wait. How long will it take? It will take 10 minutes for the fragments of the regenerated DNA to fuse into its DNA, and we're going to do that next. We'll wait. Dr. Connors said quietly. 10 minutes, at normal times, may be very fast. But currently, for Connors and Peter, it is incomparably long. Both of their hearts were beating louder as time went by. Although Dr. Connors is very confident, after all, this is the last experiment. If it fails, it's really over for him. 10 minutes, 1 minute, and 1 second passed. 8 minutes. 5 minutes. Last minute. With the last second ending, the amputated rabbit in the cage suddenly convulsed, and the position of the severed limb quickly trembled. Then it was as if something was gushing out of the position of the severed limb. Not long after, the rabbit's new forelimbs grew completely. It's exactly the same as the original. And this rabbit, still energetic in the cage, looked very healthy. Peter, hurry. Right away, doctor. Peter immediately prepared the blood-drawing tools and analyzed the rabbit's blood. He eventually discovered that everything was perfect. The rabbit's body does not have any abnormalities, and almost no side effects are produced. Looking at the test results, Peter was so happy he thought he could fly. Success, we succeeded. Doctor, we succeeded. Dr. Connors took off his glasses and excitedly wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. Finally succeeded. Live experiments with regenerative genes in reptiles were successful. This means that soon he will be able to regain his hands. Dr. Connors scratched the sleeve of his lab coat, knowing it wasn't over. Because there are still human experiments that have not been carried out. And there's not much time left. Dr. Connors scratched the empty-armed sleeve for the second time. A look of determination flashed in his eyes. The excited Peter didn't realize what had been brewing in his teacher's mind. Peter put away the remaining 2 tubes of reagents. We've all been too tired all this time. We need a good rest. Clean up the lab, go home, and get a good night's sleep, and tomorrow we'll do the final test summary. Okay, Dr. Connors. At the entrance of the school, Connors watched as Peter left the school and returned to the lab after determining that Peter had gone far. He turned on the test recorder and pointed it at himself. Peter, I'm sorry. I lied to you. Osborne Industries and the school demanded that within a week, a genetic potion that could be used in humans must be manufactured. Obviously, we still lack human experiments. But it's too late now, so you must know this. If I had succeeded in my experiment, you wouldn't have seen this video. But if it fails... Connors pointed his thoughts at the camera as if confessing his last words, holding the potion he had just put away. Without the slightest hesitation, he injected it into his body. That's it for this video, guys. If you like the video, then like, share and subscribe the channel. Stay tuned for the next video. And tell me if you have any recommendation in the comment section down below. Peace.